There's a particular kind of person you may have misunderstood. They can spend an entire evening surrounded by people and still be counting down until they can finally have some time to themselves. Not because they hate anyone, not because they have no friends, and not necessarily because they're shy. They simply don't need constant company to feel okay. Meet Nora. At work, she's social. She laughs, she talks, she has friends. But when the weekend comes, she might turn down 3 invitations without feeling guilty about it. She'd rather read, think, create something, take a walk, or simply do nothing. And when someone asks, "Don't you get lonely?" she genuinely doesn't know what they're talking about.
Because for Nora, solitude isn't an empty space, it's freedom. And that's where psychology gets interesting. Research suggests that people who enjoy solitude aren't simply introverts. In fact, introversion alone doesn't reliably explain
who prefers solitude or who finds it meaningful. Autonomy, the feeling that you're choosing your life because it genuinely fits you, appears to play an important role. So what creates this comfort with one's own company? And could some of it begin much earlier than adulthood? Today, we're looking at 6 psychological traits that can help explain people who genuinely prefer solitude, and the childhood experiences and developmental patterns that may sometimes sit behind them. Because the question isn't simply, why do they like being alone? What did they learn about themselves that made solitude feel like home? Imagine Nora receives an invitation to a party. She doesn't want to go. And that's the end of the conversation in her head. She doesn't spend 3 hours wondering whether everyone will think she's rude. She doesn't invent an excuse because she's terrified of disappointing them.
She simply thinks, "I'd rather stay home," and stays home. That sounds ordinary, but psychologically, there's something important happening. Some people rely heavily on external feedback. They want reassurance. They want approval. They want to know they're included. They want someone else to confirm that their decision was acceptable. Others are more comfortable using their own internal compass.
That doesn't mean they don't care what people think. It means other people's opinions aren't automatically the final authority. And this connects beautifully to what researchers have found about autonomy.
When people experience solitude as something they choose, rather than something imposed upon them, it tends to be experienced more positively.
This is why 2 people can spend the exact same Saturday alone and experience it completely differently. One thinks, "Nobody wanted me."
The other thinks, "I wanted this." Same room, same silence, completely different psychological experience. And that difference can begin developing surprisingly early. A child who is encouraged to make age-appropriate choices,
Entertain themselves, explore interests, and feel comfortable with their own decisions may gradually learn, "I don't always need someone else to tell me what feels right." But that isn't the only pathway. Some children develop self-reliance because circumstances demand it. Some because they discover that their inner world is genuinely fascinating. And some simply grow into adults who value autonomy. There isn't one childhood blueprint.
That's important.
Yeah.
Because we're not looking for a secret childhood trauma. We're looking for patterns of learning.
Here's something people often misunderstand. A quiet person isn't necessarily experiencing a quiet mind. Sometimes the opposite is true. Give them an interesting question, and they can disappear into it. They might spend an afternoon researching something nobody else cares about. They might obsess over a creative project, read 3 chapters when they intended to read 1, think about an idea during a walk, or suddenly remember something from 10 years ago and start wondering why it happened that way.
Their environment may be quiet. Their mind isn't. And this is one reason solitude can feel completely different to different people.
For someone who depends heavily on external stimulation, an empty afternoon can feel boring. For someone with a rich internal world, it can feel like space. Space to think, space to create, space to explore. Research on solitude has linked self-chosen time alone with experiences such as autonomy and reflection, although the effects depend heavily on why the person is alone and how they experience that time. This also explains why some people don't understand the question,
"What do you do when you're alone?" Because to them, that's like asking, "What do you do when nobody is talking?" They think.
They notice, they process, they imagine, and sometimes they discover that their own mind provides enough stimulation that they don't need to fill every empty moment. That ability can become especially noticeable in childhood.
Think about the child who could spend hours drawing, building, reading, collecting things, writing stories, or inventing games without needing someone to organize the experience for them. That child may have been developing something subtle, comfort with self-directed attention, and that can follow someone into adulthood. Now let's make this more complicated. Imagine two children sitting alone recess. From across the playground, they look identical, but one is thinking, I wish someone would come and play with me. The other is thinking, I hope nobody comes over. That's why simply seeing a child alone tells us almost nothing. Developmental research distinguishes different forms of social withdrawal. Children can spend time alone because of shyness, social anxiety, peer difficulties, or because they genuinely prefer solitary activities. So when we're asking about childhood, we shouldn't ask, were they alone? We should ask, how did being alone feel to them? That distinction changes everything. A child who discovers that they can entertain themselves, solve small problems independently, and enjoy their own interests may gradually develop confidence in self-direction. Another child may become self-reliant because asking for help repeatedly led to disappointment. Another may simply have a temperament that makes quiet exploration rewarding. The outward behavior can look similar. The internal story isn't. And this is where adulthood gets interesting. A person who learned may become less frightened by temporary distance from other people. They can miss someone without panicking. They can enjoy relationships without needing constant contact. They can spend a weekend alone without interpreting it as evidence that something is wrong. That's not emotional coldness. Sometimes it's simply self-trust. There is a difference between wanting someone in your life and wanting them available every minute. People who strongly value solitude may be particularly protective of their time. They don't necessarily want fewer relationships. They want relationships where closeness doesn't erase individuality. Imagine two friends. Friend A texts, "Why didn't you answer me?" Friend B says, "No problem, talk when you're free." Which relationship gives a solitude-loving person more room to breathe? Obviously the second. Because autonomy isn't about rejecting connection. It's about having a choice within connection. Research on everyday solitude repeatedly points toward autonomy as a major factor in whether being alone feels positive. When solitude is experienced as freely chosen, people tend to report more positive experiences. This may also explain why some people become uncomfortable with relationships that demand constant access. They don't want to be monitored. They don't want every delayed response interpreted as an emotional statement. They don't want to explain every hour spent by themselves. They want to love people without losing ownership of their own lives. And perhaps that lesson can sometimes begin in childhood. A child who is allowed to have private interests, personal space, independent choices, and healthy boundaries can gradually learn that closeness doesn't require complete psychological merging. You can love someone and still have a world that belongs to you. That may be one of the healthiest things solitude can teach. Now we reach something that can make these people particularly difficult to understand. They may not want more people. They may want more meaningful people. Nora can spend an entire evening at a party barely saying anything. Then one person asks her a genuinely interesting question. And suddenly, she's talking for an hour, maybe two, because the problem wasn't people. It was the lack of connection inside the conversation. This is why we should be careful with the stereotype that people who prefer solitude simply don't like socializing. That's too simplistic. Research treats preference for solitude as distinct from concepts such as introversion and social anxiety. Someone can enjoy people and still prefer limited interaction. They might be selective about who they give their energy to. They might prefer one deep conversation over 10 superficial ones. They might enjoy a close friendship more than a large social circle. And sometimes other people misread this. A quiet person doesn't initiate often. People assume they aren't interested. Though fewer invitations arrive, the person spends more time alone. Then everyone concludes, see, they prefer being alone. Sometimes that is true. Sometimes the social environment itself has helped create the distance. And childhood can matter here too. A child who repeatedly feels misunderstood by peers may become more selective. A child who finds one close friend more satisfying than a large group may naturally gravitate towards smaller social environments. A child who enjoys solitary interests may simply never develop the same hunger for constant group belonging. Different roads, similar adult behavior. This might be the most interesting one. When you're constantly surrounded by people, you're constantly receiving information about yourself. You're funny, you're too quiet, you're ambitious, you're weird, you're attractive, you're boring, you're successful, you're not doing enough. Social environments give us mirrors. But solitude removes some of those mirrors, and eventually you have to ask, who am I when nobody is reacting to me? That's not always an easy question, because without an audience, some identities lose their purpose. You aren't the funniest person in the room. There is no room. You aren't the smartest person there. Nobody is there. You aren't trying to impress anyone. So what remains? Your preferences, your values, your interests, your private standards, your actual thoughts.
And that is one reason solitude can create opportunities for reflection and self-directed activity.
Research has associated chosen solitude with autonomy and reflection rather than treating all time alone as inherently negative. But here's the twist.
Solitude doesn't automatically make someone self-aware. You can spend hours alone and still avoid yourself. You can use silence to reflect or use it to hide. You can become more authentic or more isolated. That's why the quality of solitude matters more than the quantity. The question isn't, how often are you alone? It's, who do you become when you are? Research on childhood social withdrawal specifically shows that different motivations, such as shyness, avoidance, or preference for solitude, can lead to similar outward behavior. So perhaps the childhood question isn't what happened to them, it's what did they learn? Did they learn that being alone was safe? Did they learn that their imagination could keep them occupied? Did they learn to solve things independently? Did they discover that they didn't need constant approval?
Did they experience relationships that made them value privacy? Or did they learn that people weren't safe enough to depend on? Those are very different stories. And two adults who both love solitude can carry completely different reasons for it. That's why we should never diagnose someone's childhood from their current personality. There's another side we can't ignore. Someone can say, I prefer being alone, and mean, I don't trust anybody anymore, or I'm scared people will reject me, or I'm exhausted from pretending I'm okay,
or I want connection, but I don't know how to reach for it. That's not the same psychological experience, and it matters. Healthy solitude generally involves some degree of choice.
You can step away and return. You can enjoy your own company and still maintain meaningful relationships. You can say, I need space without meaning. I want everyone gone. When solitude becomes something you feel trapped inside, that's a different story. The research is clear that being alone isn't automatically beneficial or harmful. Motivation, autonomy, social needs, and the experience itself all matter. So maybe the simplest test is this. When you're alone, do you feel more like yourself or less? So if you genuinely enjoy your own company, don't feel pressured to turn that into something pathological. And don't romanticize it either. Keep your friendships, keep your relationships, let people know you, but also keep a part of your life that doesn't belong to an audience. Because sometimes
the ability to sit alone with yourself isn't evidence that you've disconnected from the world. It may be evidence that you've finally learned how to stay connected to yourself. Human behavior always leaves clues, and sometimes the quietest clue is what someone chooses when nobody is asking them to choose anything. Until next time, stay curious.